Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Bullpen Theater. We also want to welcome those folks who are joining us on Facebook Live. Really, for the first time ever, we're doing our author series in a hybrid format. So it's great that we have people here, but not everybody can make it to Cooperstown. So we do have people joining us on Facebook Live as well. Very glad you could join us on this beautiful day in our small town of Cooperstown, New York. My name is Bruce Markison, and it's my pleasure today to introduce our visiting author as part of our 2022 author series, David Kelly. David is now making his third appearance in our author series. He was here in 2014, in 2018, and now in 2022. We didn't really plan it that way, but every 4 years it seems that he makes an appearance. David is a prolific writer of children's books. He has done this wonderful series called Ballpark Mysteries. Has been affiliated with Random House for a number of years now. And he now is out with his newest book in the series, book number 18. It's the Atlanta Alibi. So it ties in the adventures of the two cousins that are part of this series, the great Hank Aaron, the city of Atlanta. David is going to talk a little bit about the book, also about the process of writing children's books, researching children's books. He also has some great slides of his visit to Atlanta when he was doing research for this project. So please join me in welcoming to the author series, David A. Kelly. David.
Thank you very much, Bruce. As Bruce said, my name is David A. Kelly. I'm an author, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the books I've written and a little bit about my process for writing the books, and then we're going to talk about the Atlanta Braves book. This is the newest book in the series. It's called the Atlanta Alibi. It takes place in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Atlanta Braves Stadium. And these books are called the Ballpark Mysteries. They follow the adventures of two main characters who are cousins. Their names are Kate and Mike, and they go to different baseball stadiums to see a game or take a tour, and then they encounter a mystery. So each of the books takes place in a different baseball stadium. We start off with a Red Sox mystery. Again, I said I was from Boston, so we have a Fenway Park mystery called the Fenway Follow-Up that starts off. Mike and Kate are looking for a missing baseball bat in this book. Then they go to Yankee Stadium, and there's a ghost, and they go to a whole bunch of other baseball stadiums. The newest books in the series are the Colorado Curveball. Takes place out at the Colorado Rockies Stadium. This is fun because it's got a cool dinosaur in it. They found dinosaur bones when they were digging the new Rockies Stadium under the Rockies dugout. So there's a lot of dinosaur bones and dinosaur tracks out in that area, so I wove that into the story. Last year we had the Triple Play Twins, the Minnesota Twins mystery, which was a lot of fun. And this year was the Atlanta Braves mystery. So that's a quick overview of the book series. I've written some other books as well, other book series, MVP series, which is different sports, mysteries, and adventures. And then some nonfiction books, including this one, Miracle Mud, which is a picture book that tells the story of baseball rubbing mud. So if you've never heard the story, there's actually baseball rubbing mud that comes from a secret place in New Jersey that gets rubbed on all Major League Baseballs before a game. So before every baseball game, Red Sox game, Yankees game, Cubs game, someone on the team has to rub about 75 or 80 baseballs with a special mud that comes from a secret place in New Jersey. So it's kind of a weird story that not a lot of people know about. I turned it into a picture book, so if you want to learn about that, find the picture book at some point and learn about it. So that's a quick introduction to the books I've written so far. What I thought I'd do is start off by reading just a short couple of pages from the newest book, The Atlanta Alibi, so you get a feeling for the characters and how I set the stories. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the research that I do to go into these books. So chapter 1 is called Hammering Hank. And there's a picture. I'll show this to you on screen later as well. Might be a little bit hard to see online. Chapter 1 is called Hammering Hank. Uh-oh, another bad call, Mike Walsh said to his cousin Kate Hopkins. Watch this, Tommy's going to explode. The Atlanta Braves manager, Tommy Block's shot out of the team's dugout. The Braves were 2 runs behind the Boston Red Sox in the 8th inning. Even though it was close, the umpire had just called the Braves' Pete Euchre out at first. Tommy ran over to the first base umpire and started yelling. He pointed at Pete and waved his arms wildly. Are you even paying attention, he cried. He was safe like a bank. Go back to Little League. The umpire stepped closer to Tommy. Out. He was out, the umpire called, and you will be too if you keep it up. Tommy waved his arms at the first base. Wake up, ump, he shouted. Tommy glanced at his team in the dugout. "Hey, look guys, the circus is in town and the clowns are wearing blue." The Atlanta fans cheered and whistled. The umpire leaned closer to Tommy. "That's it," he said. "I'm the umpire and you're the one acting like a clown." "Well, get out your little broom then," Tommy said, "because you're going to need to clean up your act." Tommy stepped back and started kicking dirt. Clouds of dust flew into the umpire's shoes and pants. The crowd stood and exploded with cheers. And there's an illustration of Tommy kicking dirt at the umpire. The umpire looked down at the swirls of dirt hitting his legs. Then he threw his arm out and pointed to the stands. "You're out of the game," the umpire yelled. "Now." Tommy stopped kicking at the ground. He puffed out his chest and bumped into the umpire. A small smile crossed his face. "Oh, I'm going," he said, "but I'll be back." Tommy kicked one last cloud of dust and disappeared down the stairs into the Atlanta locker room. The fans cheered. "That's the 161st time that Tommy's been thrown out of a game," Mike said. "That's the most for any major league manager. He says it gets a team fired up and helps them win." "Well, it may help him win," Kate said, "but I don't know if he's making any friends acting like that." It was a Thursday night in May, and Mike and Kate were in Atlanta, Georgia at the Atlanta Braves baseball game. They had flown down from their home in Cooperstown, New York, earlier that day with Kate's mom. She worked as a sports reporter and was covering the weekend series between between the Atlanta Braves and the Boston Red Sox. Mrs. Hopkins was working up in the press box. Mike and Kate had seats near the Braves dugout. And that's all I can read to you from the first chapter, but I'll explain a little bit more of the mystery that happens in this book as we go through the presentation. But that gives you a feeling for the characters and a little bit about how I set the scene. And what I wanted to share with you is these books started with an idea, and that's because I've got two sons. Their names are Stephen and Scott, and back when they were in elementary school, they were playing a lot of baseball. And they're also reading a lot of mystery books and sports books, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to put all those things together. And I thought, why not come up with some mystery books that are set in Major League ballparks? So you probably know that there are 30 Major League Baseball teams. Here's a map of all the Major League teams. There are 29 in the United States. There's one up in Canada, Toronto Blue Jays. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to have a mystery in each one of these stadiums, each one of these teams. Turns out it's a really great idea because each of these teams and stadiums is very different. They have a lot of history, the stadiums are different, the teams are different, the history is different. So that allows me to come up with mysteries that are different. One of the questions I get asked as an author is, where do I get my ideas from? And the ideas for each of my ballpark mystery books comes from a research trip. So I start writing the book by taking a research trip to whatever team or stadium I'm writing about. And what I thought I'd do is share some of the things I find on some of the research trips to give you an idea of what I'm looking for. So this is a picture of me when I was researching book number 3, the LA Dodger out in California, Los Angeles Dodgers Stadium. And typically I spend about 4 or 5 days researching the books. I'll take a trip to the stadium. I'll do a tour of the stadium just the way you would. I'll go to 2 or 3 baseball games. And usually when I'm at the baseball games, I'm not sitting down kind of watching the field. I'm usually walking around the stadium, taking a lot of notes and a lot of pictures, because it's a lot easier to write a book if you have a lot of details and if you don't have to make those details up. So I take notes and pictures, and then I also do things in whatever city I'm in, because sometimes my characters, Mike and Kate, go outside the stadium and explore, do something interesting in the city. So I have to kind of take that all in. And when I'm doing the research, I usually don't have any idea what the mystery or the plot of the book is going to be. So I really want to collect as much information as I can so that when I get back home, I can kind of sit down and then kind of put it all together and try to write the book. So I'll give you some examples from some of the books in the series. So the first book was called The Fenway Follow-Up. Mike and Kate are at Fenway Park. The star hitter for the Boston Red Sox, his name is Big D. His lucky baseball bat gets stolen, so Mike and Kate have to figure out what happened to the missing baseball bat. And when they're looking for the missing baseball bat, they come across something in Fenway Park that gives them a clue as to where the baseball bat might be. And it's a feature that some people know about, but not everybody. So here's a picture of the left field of Fenway Park. You can see this big green wall is called the Green Monster. It's kind of cool, got seats on top of it. At the bottom of the Green Monster, there's a scoreboard. And I've circled something in the middle of the scoreboard that's a little bit interesting. I'm going to give you a close-up of that area. Here's a close-up of that area. So you can see this is where they put the scores for other baseball games that are happening that day. Toronto versus Detroit or Kansas City versus Tampa Bay. They slide the scores in those squares. You can also see there's some white lines that are dividing the different sections of the scoreboard, and there's something interesting happening on those white lines. You see the green dots and dashes? Anybody know what those green dots and dashes are? Yeah.
Morse code.
Morse code, that's right. So right here in the middle of Fenway Park, there's a secret message written in code that most people don't know about, but everybody who goes to the baseball game sees. So it turns out those green dots and dashes are actually Morse code. We used to use Morse code about 100 years ago before we had telephones. It was a way of sending electronic messages over telegraph wires. To do that, you convert the letters of the alphabet into a sequence of dots or dashes. Well, it turns out that the previous owners of the Boston Red Sox, their name was Mr. and Mrs. Yawkey. They owned the baseball team and they owned Fenway Park, and they wanted to put their initials somewhere in Fenway Park, but they didn't want them to be really visible. So they turned them into Morse code and kind of hid them on the scoreboard. So the Morse code on the left stands for the initials of Thomas A. Yawkey, and the Morse code on the right stands for the initials of his wife, Jean R. Yawkey. So I always thought that was kind of cool, a cool kind of fun fact about Fenway Park. And I put that in the book for Mike and Kate. When they see this, they come across this, gives them an idea of where they might look for the missing baseball bat. So that's how I took a feature at the baseball stadium and made it part of the plot of the mystery. Now another example, in book number 8, Mike and Kate go down to Florida, to the Miami Marlins, Florida park. And the Marlins Stadium is kind of neat. It was built, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago at this point. It's new, much newer than Fenway. And when they built it, they put in something kind of cool, very much unlike Yankee Stadium or Fenway Park. They put in a giant fish tank. So right here is this giant aquarium, and it's basically right behind home plate. It extends on either side of home plate, and it's filled with tropical fish. It's a little hard to see, but you can see some fish that I've tried to circle there. So you can be sitting in one of those blue seats, watching a baseball game and have these fish swim in front of you. I thought that was really cool. So I knew that this had to be a big part of the mystery. And I was trying to think about how can I make the fish tank in the stadium part of the mystery. Well, when Mike and Kate go there, they actually discover something strange in the fish tank that shouldn't be there. And that is what drives the mystery. It's actually this thing down here. It's a turtle. It's a little hard to see on the cover, but they discover a turtle in the fish tank that shouldn't be there. And that's what the mystery is for that book. And of course, one of the questions I get asked here is how can you have a glass fish tank right behind home plate? Isn't it going to get hit by a baseball, a foul ball, a broken bat, something like that? And of course it is, and it does constantly get hit by things. But they built it out of super thick, super strong glass, like 2 layers of glass. And I don't think it's broken since the stadium has been open. And it also has to be safe for the fish, so there's no vibrations can be transmitted, that kind of stuff. But it's kind of a cool, very cool feature of the stadium. And one more example, in book number 10, the Rookie Blue Jay. I told you there was one team that's up in Canada, Toronto Blue Jays. This team, when I went up to do the research, I was a little worried because I'm not a big Blue Jays fan, and they don't have as much history as the Red Sox or the Yankees have, and the stadium, frankly, isn't that interesting. It's got a playing field and a bunch of seats, and it's just not that cool. But they do have one thing that turns out is really interesting. So the Toronto Blue Jays actually have a hotel built into the stadium. So it's right behind center field, the center field seats. The hotel is there. You can check into your hotel room and watch the game from your hotel window. So those windows at the top, they actually slide open, and you can sit there and watch the game. And I thought that was pretty cool. So, of course, you have to buy a pretty expensive hotel room instead of a baseball ticket. So if you want to save money, just get a seat in the park. But I knew that this had to be a big part of the mystery. So when I was writing this book, how do you write a mystery around this hotel room or around this idea of the hotel inside the stadium? So I had my characters, Mike and Kate, go check into a hotel room with Kate's mother, and they're watching the baseball game. And then the baseball game ends. They go to bed. They go to sleep. And my character Mike gets up in the middle of the night. He's thirsty. He gets a glass of water. He comes back, he's about to go to sleep, but he looks out the window. The stadium is completely dark, pitch black. The 40,000 seats are empty. It's a little bit eerie. And then down there on the field, he sees this strange, mysterious blue light floating back and forth. And that becomes the mystery. So the mystery in this book is why is there a blue light floating in the middle of the stadium in the middle of the night? And the only reason they can see it is because they're in this hotel room. So those are some examples of how I use a feature of the stadium to kind of come up with a mystery for the book. And I thought what I do now is take you a little bit on a tour of some of the research I did for the Atlanta Braves book. Now, you've heard a couple of pages at the beginning of that book. It came out in February. It is brand new. And it started with a baseball. This is a Hank Aaron baseball. It's actually in the book. Mike buys it. It's a replica baseball in the book that Mike buys because he's excited about Hank Aaron, because Hank Aaron used to play for the Atlanta Braves. It was the Boston Braves a long time ago. And this is another baseball. So this is a baseball that I got signed by Hank Aaron when I was younger. 1974, he actually played the Hall of Fame game day here in Cooperstown. And that morning, I actually met him at a hotel. He was having breakfast. And I went to have breakfast and brought a baseball over to him and asked him to sign it. And he signed it. So I have a Hank Aaron baseball. I've been a big Hank Aaron fan ever since that time. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to put that baseball in the book. So it was kind of fun for me to do that. But there are other Hank Aaron baseballs in the book, and I'll talk about those shortly. So why did I want to write about Atlanta? In addition to being a Hank Aaron fan and liking the Atlanta Braves, there's a bunch of reasons. In addition to Hank Aaron, it's just a great team. They won the World Series last year, so a lot of excitement there. They have a new stadium. It was built about 4 years ago. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But that's kind of interesting. It's a really nice place to see a baseball game. They also have an interesting manager called Bobby Cox, and we'll talk about him shortly. He features in the book. And then they just have a great history and great location. So there's a lot of things nearby. The President Jimmy Carter's presidential library is down there. Martin Luther King Jr. birthplace and National Historic Site is there. The Atlanta sponsored the Olympics a number of years ago. They also have the CNN headquarters down there. And they're a pretty major team in the South. And of course, a lot of my fans were pretty interested in having me write a mystery for their stadium. And of course, they're actually the longest continuously operating franchise in the major league. So they've been around for a long time with lots of history. And for me writing a mystery book, that's really helpful. Having that mystery, the different history, the details, allows me to come up with an interesting mystery and different plots. And unfortunately, I usually can't use all the ideas that I come up with. So here's a picture of the stadium. This is from a couple of years ago when I was doing the research. It's a really nice stadium, great place to see a game. You can see that the scoreboard, above the scoreboard it says, above the main Jumbotron there, it says SunTrust Park. That was the name until a couple of years ago. They did change it. It's now called Truist Park. And they moved it out of Atlanta. So downtown Atlanta is here. And the Braves Stadium is kind of up to the left. It's kind of on the surrounding area of Atlanta. And I'll tell you a little bit more about why they put it up there. The park opened in 2018. It replaced Turner Field, which they had been at since 1997, which was actually the Olympic Stadium they used in the Olympics. And that had replaced the Fulton County Stadium, which is where the Braves played for a long time. And both of those were downtown. It's kind of a standard size for a stadium, 41,000. You can hit long home runs there, 495 feet. That was hit in 2020. And outside the stadium, like a lot of the newer stadiums, they have this kind of entertainment district. So there's food, shops, restaurants, that kind of thing. So you're not just going to the baseball game, you're kind of going to the entertainment area around the baseball game. So there's lots of things for fans to do. It was also designed by a company called Populous, who has designed about 19 out of the 30 baseball stadiums. There are two main baseball stadium designers. Populous has designed a lot of them. And they've actually borrowed one of the features from the Rockies, the batter's eye. So I don't know if you know, behind the pitcher, if you're behind the pitcher, there's a blank area in the stadium where they can't put seats because they don't want any kind of visual distraction behind the pitcher as the pitcher is pitching. And have the batter basically lose the baseball from the distraction. So they have something called the batter's eye, and you can do different things. You can just have blankness. In this stadium, what they have is a bunch of evergreen trees and waterfalls, which is what they have in the Rockies Stadium. So it's a nice thing to put inside the stadium. So that's some stats about the stadium. And then what I wanted to show you is what the research trip is like. So again, I go down to Atlanta for about 3 or 4 days. I'll go to a couple of games. Here I am outside the stadium. This is outside. They have basically a large plaza, lots of shops, restaurants, stuff going on there. And again, once you go inside the stadium, this is on a tour that I took. Really nice stadium. Seats, even on the upper level, are great. You're basically kind of right on top of the field. It's a lot of fun to watch the game there. Another shot of the stadium. So a lot of the newer stadiums have these kind of party areas or decks that are not just seats. So you can go to the stadium, you can take a break from watching the game, you can hang out near a fire pit, you can get foods. They have a lot of these different types of areas in the newer stadiums that are kind of fun to explore. And here's something I saw on the tour when I was there. This is the press box or press booth area of the stadium. Each of the stadiums is going to have something like this. And usually there's three or four rows of chairs and desks for reporters. Usually the windows open here. You do have to pay attention because it's right behind home plate usually. You can get hit by a foul ball. A lot of times they have dents in the ceiling or dents in the walls from foul balls that are coming up. This is where my character Mike's, Kate's mother works when she's at the game. So it's good to set the scene. And again, this is outside the stadium. This is the Battery. It's the entertainment district. So when I was doing the research trip, I noticed a few interesting things at the stadium. Some of them were quite large. So here's a tour of some of the large things I found at the stadium. This massive Lego sculpture, 44,000 Lego pieces right in one of the main walkways. Kind of cool to see. Giant baseballs. There are actually two of them in the stadium. Huge. These are over 6 feet. These are probably about 8 feet tall. Kind of neat to see. A giant drum. I think this is up in the right field stands. Gets the crowd going. They have a guy drumming during the game. Kind of gets the energy up, which is kind of neat. And giant bobblehead. So here's a giant Hank Aaron bobblehead that is in the Hank Aaron Terrace, which I'll come back to in a few minutes. But kind of cool to see that as well. So when I'm doing the research, I'm looking for interesting details. And one of the things I came across here was before the game, before some of the games in Atlanta, they actually let the Little League teams parade around the field on the warning track. They go right around the warning track to the field, and I thought that was really cool. And the kids were really excited about this. And I thought my characters, Mike and Kate, would really love to do that. So that's how actually they ended up on the cover doing that. So this cover shot is my characters, Mike and Kate, parading around the field before one of the games. They actually are friends with one of the Little League teams that is doing that parade around the field, and they invite them to come with them. And of course, Mike takes that opportunity to kind of ham it up. He's kind of juggling baseballs. He's going to drop one of them shortly. It's going to roll over near the dugout, and then he's going to discover a clue that they need to solve the mystery. So that's how I included that into the mystery. Now, there's some other things that give me ideas that made it into the book. So the Atlanta Braves have a place called Monument Garden, and it's basically right kind of behind the walkway behind home plate. It's kind of a nice area where a lot of the Braves' history is put on display. And again, they've been around for a long time, over 100 years, and they have lots of things on display, including a Hank Aaron area. So there's a Hank Aaron sculpture with video clips they're showing in the background. They have a replica jersey from 1974. That's when he hit a home run that broke Babe Ruth's record. That's home run 715. They have a cool sculpture that shows how many home runs in total that Hank Aaron hit, 755. And I think if you count them, there should be 755 bats there, but I'm not going to count them at the moment. But it's kind of a neat sculpture. And this is what it looks like in the book. So this is my illustrator, Mark Mayers, illustrated one of these scenes where my characters are walking through this monument garden, and it kind of looks like this. He does some interpretation of the displays, but you get the idea, and it's always fun to see what he does for the illustrations. Now, another thing I found was this collection of managers of the Atlanta Braves, and I've circled one, and this is Joe Torre, but over there is a manager called Bobby Cox, and he was the manager of the Braves for 26 years, so a fairly long time, and he does hold the record for getting ejected from games at 158. So he's a fairly confrontational manager, and when I came across that fact, I thought, this is kind of interesting. Maybe he starts to irritate the umpires. Do you think the umpires like dealing with this guy all the time? Maybe they're getting a little frustrated with him. So maybe there's a little bit of motivation for someone to do something to this manager. So that might factor into this book. And that's one of the things I'm looking for, is who could be the criminal and what's their motivation. So here it is in the book. Here's the illustration of Tommy Blocks, my manager, kind of charging out of the dugout to kind of kick dirt at the umpire. And then you can also see I've included something else here. Mike is eating boiled peanuts. So I don't know if you've been to the South, but that's one of the things that you can find at the stadium and other places. They're kind of slippery, a little bit slimy, a little bit salty, it's kind of fun for me to include those details when I can. So I told you to tell you a little bit more about Hank Aaron. They have a section in the stadium called the Hank Aaron Terrace, and that's because Hank Aaron played for the Atlanta Braves for many years, about 20 years, 1955 to 74. He holds the record for hitting, he held the record for hitting the most home runs in baseball at 755 for many years. And he's really associated with the Atlanta Braves. So they dedicated this section of the ballpark to them, the Hank Aaron Terrace. And you've already seen the bobblehead in an earlier slide. Here's another sculpture. It actually is a little hard to read here, but it says 715. And this is made out of 715 bat handles for baseball bats. And the handles actually are engraved with the home run number, the date, and the location of where he hit that home run. And that's kind of a cool sculpture. You get to see it. You can kind of see where he hit those home runs and when. This is what the terrace looks like. It's kind of a standard luxury area for a baseball stadium these days. Some food stations and different exhibitions. So the pillars in this have different exhibits related to Hank Aaron. And this one has the exhibit for home run number 715. And this is the home run where he beat Babe Ruth's record that had stood for many years. And I thought this was really cool. He hit it on April 8th, 1974. And they have the baseball and the bat on display. I thought these things have to be really valuable. A lot of people would probably love to have that in their home or some other place. So this gave me a motivation for the book in terms of what could have happened. What if somebody actually decides to steal that baseball and bat? So that's what happens in this book. The mystery is someone breaks into this display case. You can see my illustrator Mark has changed it a little bit, but they steal the baseball and the bat, and Mike and Kate have to figure out what happened to it. So that's the mystery here. Now, some other parts of the stadium, as I take the tour, they showed me this place. It's called Under the Chop House. So they have a restaurant, seating area called the Chop House. And then they actually have field level seats that are actually right behind right field. So kind of cool. I didn't get to see a baseball game from here, but it seems like it'd be a really great place to see a baseball game from because you're right at the field level. The players can come up to you. And in the book, Mike and Kate actually get to watch a game here, and they get to talk to the Boston fielder who is out in the outfield. So that becomes part of the story as well. Now, there's other things I find when I'm doing research that don't fit into the book for a variety of reasons, but they're kind of cool. So they actually have a thing called the Mizuno glove experience, where you can go to the baseball game and you can borrow a baseball glove when you're at the game. So if you want to try to catch a fly ball or foul ball or something else, you give them your credit card, they give you a glove, and then you return the glove at the end of the game, and it's totally free. Now, if you don't return a glove, then you bought probably an expensive glove. But it's kind of cool. I love that they have it there. They also, like a lot of the newer ballparks, have like a kids area where you can do kind of cool activities. Again, the kids get a little bit tired just sitting and watching the game. They can go burn off some energy. This one has lots of cool batting cages, climbing towers, slides, and some kind of pitching thing. So these are really cool. A lot of times I try to get my characters to do something in these areas, but in this story, in this mystery, it didn't fit, so I wasn't able to use it. Outside the stadium, they had this long slide, so instead of going down the stairs, you could just go down the slide. They have a water feature if you're hot. It's Atlanta in the summer. Again, I would have possibly sent my characters to use one of those, but it didn't fit into the story. And of course, you can burn off all that energy. You might need to get it back. And you can do that by stopping by a Waffle House. There are a lot of Waffle Houses down in the Atlanta area, and my character Mike loves to eat, so this is something that he would really love. And I had, of course, sample it, so this was my breakfast. And it didn't fit into the story. Again, sometimes Mike and Kate do things that I'm able to get in the story. This one didn't fit in. But they actually do have a Waffle House that stands at the stadium, so you can do it there too. But not only having hash browns or waffles, one way to get energy back, you can also get energy back with hot dogs. So if you've ever been to Atlanta, there's a restaurant called the Varsity, which is really famous, known in Atlanta for hot dogs, hamburgers, shakes, apple pies, that kind of stuff. 2 miles of hot dogs and 300 gallons of chili a day is what they serve at this location. This didn't fit into the story either, but I of course did the research, so I had to have a hot dog and chili and the apple pie. Peanuts. I did put peanuts in the story. It wasn't these peanuts. These were actually, I found these at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library, which is just south of downtown Atlanta. If you're in the area, it's a great place to visit. It's a really cool library history center. They have this replica of the Oval Office. Again, that would have been fun to have my characters Mike and Kate go to, but it just didn't fit into the mystery. And the world of Coca-Cola. I met this great guy, Dr. Pemberton. He apparently invented Coca-Cola in 1886, I think that is, supposed to be. And they have the world of Coca-Cola in downtown Atlanta. You can go learn about Coca-Cola and all the history that they've had over the past 120 years. Here you see the vault of where they keep the secret formula for Coca-Cola. I'm not sure that's the real vault, but it's a cool exhibit. You can go guess what you think the different ingredients in the recipe for Coca-Cola are. And then when you're done with this tour, you get to go upstairs, and they have an area that has all these different sodas available for free. So like 120 different sodas separated by different continents. So they produce sodas for different continents. So here's Africa, the different sodas they sell, some of the different sodas they sell there. I know that my character Mike would have loved this. He would have probably been sick if he had gone there. So you can sample all these sodas, and they're not all good. And especially if you ever go there, you want to avoid Beverly. This was produced in Italy between 1966 and 71, and it has a bitter citrus taste made from grapefruit rinds, and it's really terrible. And you can go online and look for Beverly soda, and everyone complains about it and how bad it is. But it's so bad that I think they're now selling it also at like a special Coca-Cola World at Disney World or something. People like to try it out. The Olympics. I mentioned the Olympics were in Atlanta a number of years ago in the 90s. I could have used that as part of the book, but they didn't fit in. So you can go visit Centennial Olympic Park in downtown Atlanta. Kind of neat to see. And right near Olympic Park is actually the CNN headquarters. So I did take the CNN tour. It's kind of cool to see how the news is produced in the CNN building. And here's the inside of the CNN headquarters building. Kind of interesting. They got this escalator that goes up to that big world thing, and the news offices are on all those floors. But this building didn't start out as a CNN headquarters. It actually started out as something quite different. When it opened up, I think in '76 maybe, it was actually the world of Sid and Marty Krofft. It was an amusement park. So this whole area back here was an amusement park. This was maybe an ice skating rink down here. I forget exactly what that is. It was only open for about 6 months. It didn't last. It just frankly wasn't interesting enough from what I can tell. But they turned it into an office building, and then the CNN headquarters shortly after that. So again, could have worked that into the story, but didn't. And Martin Luther King Jr., very associated with Atlanta. They actually have a national historical site down there, historical park, which is fairly close to the Jimmy Carter Library. Great to go visit. You can see the birthplace where he was born in 1929. They have the church nearby, and they have this historic site, the visitor center, lots of interesting information there. But it turns out outside, I don't have a good picture of this unfortunately, outside the visitor center, basically over here, is a Walk of Fame. And on the Walk of Fame is Hank Aaron's footprints. So here's a baseball connection for me as I'm researching the Martin Luther King Jr. historical site, and I thought this was pretty cool. And this actually this is one of the things that ended up being in the book. So Mike and Kate, here's an illustration from the book of those footprints. And what becomes important is that Kate actually traces these out. So she does like a rubbing of this. She gets paper and pencil, and they rub it out, and they rub out the outlines of Hank Aaron's shoes. And that actually becomes important when they're trying to figure out one of the clues for the mystery. They use that same technique in a different way, and it becomes a secret to unlocking the mystery. So these are actually a pretty important step of the book. And maybe one last thing to show you is the wall. So what is a wall like this doing in the middle of a parking lot? You can kind of see there's a big parking lot here. It's actually the wall that Hank Aaron hit the famous home run number 715 over. So this is from the old Fulton County Stadium. And they tore down the stadium a number of years ago, but they actually left this section of the stadium standing in the wall. And the blue wall behind it, that's the exterior wall of the stadium. So you can see the outline, basically, of the old Fulton County Stadium where the Atlanta Braves used to play. This section of the wall where Hank Aaron hit it over. And they put in these bricks to mark the base paths. So you can actually go to this parking lot and pretend you're Hank Aaron. You can sit here, pretend you're gonna hit the ball over the wall right there and run the bases if you want. And I thought that was pretty cool. It's actually in just this parking lot to the football stadium, I think is nearby. So it's kind of strange, but kind of cool to visit. So I do all that research. I take on all that information, then I go back to my home office near Boston, and I sit down and try to write the story. And the writing, I try to put all that information that I found together. So there's things that I'm thinking about when I'm writing the story. I'm thinking about the information from the research trip that I have. I'm also thinking about mystery ideas. So it turns out there's a lot of different ways to write a mystery book. In this book, we have a missing baseball and a missing baseball bat. But in this book, the Minnesota Twins book, we have somebody on this cover. You can see somebody is throwing a giant red water balloon at these two Minnesota Twins players. So we have something strange going on. And we don't really know why it's happening or going on. That makes for a good mystery as well. You can have a mystery where you have a ghost or something supernatural. You can have a mystery where somebody's threatening someone else. There's a lot of different ways to have a mystery book. So I try to combine one of those mystery ideas with the details that I find on the research trip to come up with the actual mystery topic. Of course, you have to have clues and kind of red herrings in the book. So red herring is a kind of a false clue. It's something that's going to mislead you or mislead my detectives. And then you have to have some way to solve the mystery. So the clues are going to help you solve the mystery, but then my characters, Mike and Kate, actually have to do a little bit of investigation, and they're usually missing one important piece that they're going to find by taking some kind of action. Of course, you have to catch the criminal. That usually happens toward the end of the book in about chapter 9, and then you have to resolve the story. So I write the story. It takes me about a month to come up with a good outline, and then I write the story. That takes probably about 3 weeks. I type it up on a computer. It looks kind of like this. Finally, when I think it's really good, I'll send it into my editor at Random House. It takes her about a month to read it, and then she'll send it back to me. And when it comes back to me, it looks like this. So this page has about 30 changes, and I've got about 60 pages, so I have hundreds of changes every time I write a new book. Luckily, a lot of times the changes are kind of easy. You can see she's flipping the order of some words. She's moving some of those words down a line. Sometimes she's crossing out whole sentences or whole sections or just some individual words. Sometimes she's replacing some words with other words. And sometimes she's asking me questions. And of course, sometimes the changes are bigger and I have to cut out whole sections or whole chapters and add new things. There's a lot of revision that goes into writing one of these books. Once I go through, I make all those changes, I'll read it through, I'll try to make it as clean as I can, I'll send it back to her, and then she'll send it back to me with more changes. So we go through this process about 3 or 4 times. It takes a lot of revision to write one of these books. And then once the revisions are all done, then it gets sent to the illustrator, whose name is Mark Mayers. He does illustrations. That usually takes about 6 months of schedule time, and then the books are produced. So the whole process takes about 2 years before research, the writing, the illustration, the sales prep, and the printing. So that's kind of the process for doing the research for Ballpark Mystery Book, doing the writing and illustrating, and then I'll give you a sneak peek of the next Ballpark Mysteries book, which is probably going to be out early next year. It's going to be a Mets book. So it's a Mets mystery. It takes place in Citi Field, and it's related to a game in 1969 where a black cat went onto the field and gave bad luck to the Cubs. So the Cubs kind of want revenge for that a little bit. So there's going to be another black cat showing up at Citi Field. So that's the story of the Ballpark Mysteries. I'm happy to take any questions. If anybody has questions about the books or about the writing or about the Braves, and if you want to just pick up one of these cards at the front, you can do that on your way out. It's my signature, as well as a list of all the Ballpark Mystery books on the back, kind of like a checklist. So anybody have any questions about the books or about the writing?
Do you ever overrule the person that's making corrections?
So good question. Do I ever push back on the editor when I get feedback? I usually take most of their edits. There are some times when I will push back if I just feel like it needs to happen a certain way. But a lot of times I feel like they have the context for the broader market. You know, I can see the story in my head, but if something isn't reading right or the words aren't right, but sometimes it is a judgment call, and you know, I'll push back when I need to. But usually it's their stuff.
Do you have to get any kind of permission from the ball clubs
So,
or anything?
Good question. Do I have to get permission? The answer is no.
Okay.
But I have to be careful. We have to be especially careful in the illustrations. So I write the books. I just go as a fan, the way you would go to do the research. I'm not writing about current players for the most part, so that doesn't give me any problems. You can write about historical players. I sometimes include them in the main story, but usually they're in the dugout notes section in the back where I tell some fun facts. So all that's kind of fair game. You have to be careful with the illustration. So you can't put the logo fully in the illustration. You can't put the logo on the cover because that might, you know, be an endorsement of the product. And you have to be careful with things like mascots. So you can put the mascots, like the Philly Fanatic is in the Phillies book, but he's not on the cover, and sometimes he's occluded. You put things in front of them or in front of the logo, so it's not fully visible. Yeah. So, but generally, no, there aren't problems yet. We'll see. Any other questions about the books? Yeah.
So when you do the stadium tours, do you just go in, get the ticket like a regular person, or they ever, I guess, accommodate you to?
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
no,
it's
I
good for the
just.
team too, though, so, I mean.
Yeah, good question. I just do it as a regular person, and I've done one or two kind of special tours. The Miami Marlins was one because the stadium, they weren't giving tours and were closed. But usually, I just want the information that anyone else would get. And also, even though I've published a lot of books, they're not that interested in helping me. They're kind of busy playing baseball, so it's hard to get their attention if I wanted a specialized tour. But a couple times I've been able to do it. Yeah, but the regular tour is generally fine.
David, you mentioned that Hank Aaron was your favorite player, and
Yeah.
you got his autograph. Did
Yeah.
you ever get to talk to him?
I didn't. No, that would have been interesting. Yeah.
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 I could ask you why you liked him. Pretty obvious, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was the home runs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That did it.
Yeah.
Did you see the game when he hit 750?
I did. Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Very good. Well, we want to thank you for coming on. We want to thank David Kelly, the author of Ballpark Mysteries. The newest book is The Atlanta Alibi. We're going to head out momentarily into the Library Atrium. David will be able to sign books for you. If you want to ask questions on a one-on-one basis, you can do that as well. Also, those who are watching this on Facebook Live, obviously can't come to the Atrium right now, but you can go to our website, which is baseballhole.org, and then from there go to our museum shop, and you can purchase signed copies of the book. Again, that's baseballhole.org. Go to the museum shop at our website. David, we thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being
Appreciate
with
it.
us. Folks, please join us in the Library Atrium if you have the time. Thank you.